Hey, Kurt Pappy coming to you from Tucson, Arizona. Well, not Tucson, Arizona this morning. I'm actually about an hour north of Las Vegas. But that's what this video is all about. It's all about taking a 5,000 mile road trip where I go do some paddling, some hiking in Yellowstone and Grand Tetons, and what I learned on my trip along the way.
This is my route, a counterclockwise loop around the entire western half of the United States, starting and ending in Tucson, Arizona. My first planned activity was an 8-day paddling adventure in Minnesota's Boundary Waters Canoe Area wilderness, with some former co-workers from VERITAS software where I worked back in the early 2000s. Next was a 2-day backpacking and fly fishing trip with a fellow backpacking gear tester in the Absaroka-Beartooth wilderness. After picking up Mark and Jeff, who flew in from Connecticut, we continued on for a 4-day backpacking trip down Yellowstone's BECHLER River. From there, we left Richard behind in Bozeman and continued on for 4 days of hiking in the Grand Tetons. Last but by no means least was a short week with my grandson in Beaverton, Oregon. So here are some of my takeaways from the overall trip planning process. First, this trip was a wonderful opportunity to connect with far-flung friends and family. It was not just about beautiful scenery, it was about connecting with people I care about. It worked well to string together multiple sets of people, activities, and locales in a big loop. The logistics and planning that was required to pull this all off with little or no spare days for failure was challenging, but well worth the effort. I often link up with hiking partners by picking them up at an airport far from home. Rental cars are really expensive. I've had a few issues with late flights, but so far nothing that has caused a serious impact to a trip. On this trip, I picked up Mark and Jeff in Bozeman and dropped them off in Boise on my way to Portland. It was really fun to have a variety of activities along the route. Backpacking, fishing, canoeing, and family fun made the 5 weeks go by in a flash. Planning for this trip began about 8 months before, because it had to fit into so many people's schedules. Also, the Boundary Waters, Yellowstone, and Grand Tetons backcountry areas can fill up months in advance, and all require permits. I was really stressed about having all my food lined up for the 3 hiking trips. Fortunately, Bob managed the consumables for the canoe trip, so that was 1 week I didn't have to worry about. All the backcountry areas are prime bear country, so there was also the need to fit the food into bear canisters. I do a lot of dehydrating for my dinners, so prepping and packaging all my meals and laying them out by day and trip helped me have confidence that I did not under or oversupply, and it worked out perfectly. The first leg of my trip was a 3-day drive from Arizona to Minnesota with overnights in Tucumcari, New Mexico and Kansas City, Missouri. On day 4, Greg and Bob drove from Duluth to the canoe outfitters up by the Canadian border. It helped to take a break along the way for an hour or two and work out in a gym in Missouri. My legs got pretty stiff and sore after a couple days of driving, and a workout really made me feel a lot better. Had I been car camping, this would have been a good opportunity for a hot shower too. It was finally time for the first adventure to begin, with our tow from the outfitter to American Point where we would start paddling. This is what we dream about, dipping the paddles into calm water on a pristine lake with blue skies overhead. There were enchanting sunrise moments, and the thrill of hauling a fish into the boat.
That one might be worth dinner. You think you keep them, based on how things are?
Unfortunately, there were also days where it wouldn't stop raining, and the cold temperatures made the going tough. In a 5-week trip, there will be periods of horrid weather, and I did plan for it by bringing 3 complete sets of clean, dry hiking clothing and quality rain gear. I love to sleep in my hammock in the Boundary Waters, and on this trip I had one of my most beautiful hangs of all time on the shores of Cherry Lake. I was high and dry with a spectacular view of the lake and shoreline. Time to get back in the car and drive 2 days to Montana. I spent a night in Bismarck and found I needed to do an unplanned load of laundry as I was running out of clean driving clothes. I just did not account for all the days of driving somehow. On the second day of the drive, I had a bonus stop at another national park, little known but beautiful Teddy Roosevelt. I had done some backpacking there a decade ago, and the rest stop brought back fond memories. From there, I was on to Bozeman to meet up with my buddy Richard for a couple of days hiking and fly fishing in the mountains. Then I picked up Mark and Jeff from Connecticut at the Bozeman airport, and the 4 of us headed to Yellowstone. In Yellowstone, I switched from my hammock to a tent because I was not 100% sure of having trees at all our campsites. Sadly, it would have been a non-issue, so live and learn. It was good to have space in the car for multiple shelters and clothing, though. Most people travel to Yellowstone for the iconic geysers and hot pools, as well as viewing wildlife like the bison. We saw a few of these, but our primary intent was a 4-day backpack down the BECHLER River, reputed to be one of the best hikes in the park. We were able to change our campsite on night 3 from Colonnade Falls to Lower Boundary Creek, which made our hiking day 3 more substantial. Our hike began at the Lone Star Trailhead, and we took our first break at the Lone Star Geyser. The BECHLER route has a number of river crossings, and this was one of the simpler ones we encountered when we took a detour to Shoshone Lake. This detour happens to be the Continental Divide National Scenic Trail, and the lake was peaceful. Hey, this is our campsite, 9B9, Albright Falls. Not a bad view. I have to say, Albright Falls is one of the most impressive campsites I've stayed in my lifetime. The falls itself is really stunning, and right behind our site. I normally never wear waterproof boots, but they would have been nice to have on this hike and in the Tetons. That said, they will not keep your feet dry when fording the BECHLER River in a blizzard. Yellowstone is known for its spectacular waterfalls, and Iris Falls does not disappoint. Day 4 dawned crisp and cold, around 25 degrees. The socks I left out to dry overnight were frozen stiff, but a few minutes thawing in the morning sun and they were good to go. I brought a new piece of gear on this trip, an REI Magma 15 down sleeping bag. I really like this bag. It compacts down very small and kept me warm on the coldest nights without having to add extra layers. Another tactic that worked well was to have a detailed gear list. I've been refining this list for several years now, and it includes activities such as checking tire pressure, not just gear I need to bring. I found it helps to check off items as they are packed into the car. That way, nothing gets left behind. The next leg was the short drive from Yellowstone to Grand Tetons. These 2 parks are so close together that it would be a shame to visit one and miss the other. Though our plan was to backpack, we ended up staying at the Gros Ventre campground. More on why in just a few moments. We were pleasantly surprised at the campground, though. It was spacious and, unknown to us, is a popular wildlife viewing spot, such as this moose that sauntered regularly through the campground. Just a short stroll behind the campsites is the Gros Ventre River, which we hiked along almost every evening. When we first arrived at the backcountry office for our backpacking permits, the weather forecast for days 2 and 3 looked abysmal. Rain, cold, and snow at higher elevations. We were not prepared for winter camping and hiking, and decided to forego the backpacking. Turned out it was a good decision, as the snow was more than double what was predicted, and it's apparent from these shots of the actual conditions on days 2 and 3 that backpacking up in the mountains would not have been a lot of fun. On day 1, we decided to take the tram up to the ski chalet. The views from the tram were stunning, and we even saw a moose on the way up. The backdrop of the peaks on a beautiful day made for great hiking. We headed down the mountaintop in the direction of Marion Lake. Here's our hiking route, and I recommend it, but it's pretty strenuous. It involved a descent and ascent of about 1,800 feet, and at an altitude of 9,000 to 10,000 feet, one can get pretty winded. It was a glorious day, and there were still a few wildflowers eking out the last of their blooms. The hiking was a mix of piney forests and open meadows with eye-popping vistas. The weather on day 2 was the pits, but we had decent rain gear, so we decided to head back up for a day of sightseeing at Yellowstone. Always good to be flexible with the itinerary on this type of trip. Mark and Jeff had never been to Yellowstone before, so we spent hours walking around checking out Old Faithful and the other geysers and pools. Day 3 weather was a little better. The rain slowed down a bit, so we decided to day hike around Jenny and String Lakes. Well, this is the way it looked when we started out. We had a couple nice hours in between, about a 10-mile hike, and this is the way it ended up again. So, yeah. Grand Teton National Park. Aren't the mountains beautiful? This was a very green-colored hike, as the vegetation was lush from all the rain. We crossed some nice cascades along the loop. Well, our lunch spot was right over here today, and we had a nice view of String Lake down below. The rain has let up for a little while, and we are right below the snow line. You can see it's really not that far above us, and it's socked in with clouds and sprinkling of snow here, but the farther up you go, I'm sure the deeper it gets. So we're hiking just below the snow line today and just below the cloud line, which is perfect. We were a bit concerned that this kayaker wasn't going to make it back and alerted the park ranger to make sure he was okay. Well, it finally cleared up this morning, and you can see the snow blowing off the peaks. This is called the Cathedral Group right here. These are the big peaks of the Grand Tetons. A little bit of clouds, a little bit of snow blowing off the top. It's a gorgeous morning. So we elected to hike up to Holly Lake and back to see what the conditions were like at elevation. The snow blowing off the peaks as we climbed Paintbrush Canyon was stunning, and the views back down the canyon of the glacial lakes in the basin were like a painting. As we got closer to Holly Lake, the snow started to get more substantial. We had talked to some backpackers who had spent the night there, and they estimated about 10 inches of snow, and that's about what we saw. After slogging through the snow, we finally made it to Holly Lake. Here we are at Holly Lake, elevation 9410. Yeah, I'd say the estimate of 10 inches of snow with compaction from yesterday is about right. Here's the lake. It's a pretty spot. We're up near where the cloud ceiling is. So you get up much higher, you'll be up in the clouds. Ton of snow here. A little chilly beanie. Snow's not melting too fast. Good slog up here. Peaks are beautiful today with the blue sky and the clouds in the background. Really picturesque. Hiking out of Holly Lake here. Time to go. Beautiful spot for lunch, but a little chilly. So we're gonna hike down below the snow line to have our lunch. There isn't a lot of fall color in the Tetons, but what we did see was really pretty. I worked on a new camping technique on this trip, toasting tortillas over a gas flame. It really freshens them up nicely, and it's amazing how much better they taste when they're hot. The next leg of the trip was the 2-day drive from Grand Teton to Portland, Oregon, with a stop along the way to drop Jeff and Mark at the Boise airport. My daughter and her family lived there, including my grandson. He and his grandma had a great time splashing in this fountain. My wife brought a couple of my latest gear tests with her from Tucson in her luggage, including this new lightweight tent that I'll be evaluating over the next 4 months. My grandson had a good time playing in it. A 6,000-mile road trip is going to involve some car maintenance. I ended up getting my 1-year, 12,000-mile service done in Bozeman, where they forgot to check my tire pressure, which was a bit disappointing. Around the same time, my AC died. I took my Subaru into a dealer in Portland when I got there, where it was diagnosed with a cracked condenser coil and was fixed under warranty. When I was driving through a construction zone in Montana, a truck coming from the opposite direction kicked up a good-sized rock that left a nice ding in my windshield that I still haven't gotten around to getting fixed. Bottom line, plan for some auto issues on a trip of this magnitude. I've done the drive between Portland and Tucson several times now, and both the California and Nevada routes have their pluses and minuses. In general, I've found that I can trust Google Maps to give me the fastest overall route, but I have to temper its recommendation with experience and common sense. Traffic through Sacramento and LA can back up for hours if there's a traffic problem, so I elected to go the Nevada route, which is very predictable and relaxing, if a little slower. I've learned to not follow the route blindly in rural areas, and instead drive with a road atlas open beside me so I know precisely what kind of road Google is trying to route me on. Forest road, county, state, or U.S. highway, it makes a big difference when it comes to availability of services and terrain. I was really pleased with the mileage I got on my '29 Subaru Forester. I actually did better than the EPA highway spec, and the 16-plus gallon tank allowed me to go for most of a day without refilling. Bottom line is, would I do it again? The answer is an emphatic yes. I'm already starting to think about next year. Thanks for watching. If this video was helpful, please click like, subscribe, or leave me a comment below.